Hi, I'm Twinny the Tinker, and today I'm in Whiteman Park in Perth, and it's full of all the stuff like what's behind me there, big steam shovels and things. It's kind of a land transport themed heritage park. Behind me is a very cool tractor. It's a single cylinder 10-litre engine. Can you imagine the vibration in that thing? So it's got massive flywheels either side of the engine to kind of smooth that out a bit, and it produces somewhere between 15 and 30 horsepower. That's a pretty big range, but that's because it can run on just about any liquid fuel you can put in there. Apparently this one runs best on crude oil, completely unrefined petrochemicals. So just to give you some idea of the sort of stuff that we're about to look at in the Tractor Museum, which is right here. Behind me here is a Fowler steam traction engine. Now this is kind of the more agricultural version of the Showman's engine that I based my wheelbarrow build on. So we'll have a bit of a look around this one and show you some of the features and why people were just so proud of these things. These things were designed to go in some pretty rough terrain. There weren't that many roads around in the farming districts where these things were used. And like even modern tractors today, they still got stuck. Now, this particular one has a really cool feature. It's got a built-in winch. So if you come in close here, you can see that there's a pin and there's this big kind of lobe in the middle of the hub. And that's because you can disconnect that hub and drive the winch on the inside. If I pass the camera in here, you can see that there's the winch drum just there, and it connects through that pin. So let's see if we can get the camera going where the winch cable would go. You start on this drum, come out through here, and along here, through, and out through this fair lead here at the front of the traction engine. So that way, if you get this thing stuck, and I'll find out how much it weighs in just a second, but I can guess it's around about sort of 10 tonne or a bit more, then you can get it out. No power steering on this one, but here you can see the worm gear turning, and that chain tightens up, and here we go, the front wheels are moving. Wow, that's intense. Is it hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite difficult, but there you go, there's a demonstration of that steering system working. Brilliant. Well, I feel like the luckiest human being alive right now. I'm actually on the footplate of that steam traction engine. And here is the steering wheel that Jim was turning before. And Jim, can I demonstrate how much play there is in it? So to give you some idea about the steering on this thing, it's got a little bit of play in the steering wheel. So if we go to one side, okay. So it's engaging about here. So if we go 1, 2, 2.5 turns of play. That's all right. As I said, the steering wasn't quick, but it got you where you need to go. And this engine still runs. In fact, there's 2 of these here at Whiteman Park. And one of them, this one here, towed the other one in front of the museum here a few years ago. And if you're wondering, there's the fuel tank. So if you've got one of these and you run out of fuel, all you need is an axe. Alright, I feel utterly spoilt being allowed to be up here, so let's go and have a look at some of the other tractors that are here. One of the other great exhibits here at the Tractor Museum at Whiteman Park is this beast that is behind me. Now, it starts off at the front here, and it looks like a big but fairly regular tractor. But if I start walking back, you can see that this is the first of many. So here behind me again is another one. They've taken the front axle off and they've joined it up to the first tractor. We keep going. As if doubling up a tractor wasn't enough, they've done it again. And we've now got 3 of these things. And they've all been fitted with bigger Perkins diesel engines. Now, this tractor, in its huge configuration, look at the fuel tanks on, they're massive. Now if we come down here, if I can get the camera in, here we go, and you can see that there is how it would have been set up in its configuration with 1, 2, 3, 4 ploughs behind it. Huge amount of power there. And this is what broadacre farming in Australia leads to. Some really fascinating inventions and innovations like this tractor behind me. But there's more. Okay, so behind me now there's a tractor called Lana. And Lana was actually built entirely on the farm. Someone built this thing from scratch on their farm. Huge diesel engine, tyres almost as tall as I am, 4-wheel drive. That's a serious amount of power, and you could pull a serious piece of kit with that. We're about to fire up this absolute beast of a tractor, which I showed you just before. 10 litres, single cylinder. Let's see if we can get it started. So Neil, what's the process for starting it? Right, so we're hitting that up with a blowtorch. Propane. Yep. So, propane gas in there, heating up the head of the engine. Very hot, alright. Yep. Pump the fuel up. Yep, there's your fuel pump. And then you use the steering wheel as your crank. Yeah, okay. Alright, here we go. As it's still running cold, you can see there's an oscillation that's been set up, and the whole tractor is rocking backwards and forwards with that massive 10-litre single cylinder and the huge flywheels either side of it. Now Neil, who owns this tractor, just told me that you can actually start the engine backwards, and you've got to be careful with that. So you can slow it down to the point where it's almost stopped, and then if you're careful to get your timing right, you can kick it back the right way and start the engine going forwards again. Otherwise you find yourself going very quickly in reverse. Okay, behind me here is a really interesting tractor made by Brockhouse Engineering, and it runs on a little Morris 8 engine, and it's super lightweight. Now this tractor has a really interesting story because here you go, here's that small engine. If you go to the back here, you can see that it's got a really tiny little diff for a tractor and reduction gearing. Now this tractor was super light, and that was actually its downfall. It just couldn't get traction in the soil, and if it did get traction, then the axles broke. So, a kind of an example of a tractor that maybe didn't work as well as they expected. Now the manufacturer that made this used to make small rotary hoes and things like we saw around on the other side of the museum there. And they thought they'd have a go at the tractor game, but they took a bit too much of their small rotary hoe business into the tractors, and it just didn't have the mass that it needed to get traction in the soil. Behind me here is another really interesting tractor. Now this is one of the grey Fergies. Now this particular one was made in America by Ferguson, but powered with Ford engines and made by Henry Ford. Now the story of how that happened was really interesting. So it started off as Mr. Ferguson making his tractors in the UK, working with David Brown, and they were originally powered with David Brown engines. But Ferguson and David Brown had a bit of an argument. So Ferguson took his design and took his patents over to America and worked with Henry Ford to build them over there, powered by Ford engines. Now, Henry Ford was a fairly objectionable sort of person, and eventually everyone had an argument with him. And Ferguson was no different. So he took his business and his patents back to England, and he started making this tractor here, which was made by the Standard Motor Company to Ferguson's design, using Standard Motor Company engines. So the story of the Ferguson tractor is actually a really interesting one, and we might cover some of that in a later video. But I just want to say a huge thank you to the Tractor Museum here at Whiteman Park, and to Jim and Neil, who are standing behind me there, for showing me around all the tractors, and to Neil for starting up his tractor. So thank you very much, and I'll catch you next week. I'm Troy the Tinker. Bye.